We'll call the May meeting of the April meeting of the 20 planning board to order. Would you stand please for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, folks. So we'll call the roll. Mr. Jim Scully is absent. Tony Dickinson. Here. Jim Schufeldt.
Present.
Jeff York.
Here.
Peter Keel present. We have quorum. First item. Adoption of the meeting minutes from March 18th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for last month's meeting.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item is review a request by the applicant to extend review period for 2025-002, the project at 604 7th Avenue. I understand the applicant is with us remotely. Is that correct,
Yes.
Mr. Frost?
Yes, it is.
So can you hear us?
I
Can
can
we hear you?
me?
The answer is
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
This is not our. This is not our list. This is just an extension.
Forgive me, I might not be the best working with the audio.
want to come back to it, Eric?
I don't know that we have a two-way street.
You can just talk to him. You can hear us.
Yeah, Joe, we're gonna just speak with you because we have to figure out the audio. I apologize for the inconvenience, but if you just want to respond to the questions that the chairman will have for you, and we can read your text.
Sure.
So you requested an extension for the review period for your application. Do you have a idea how long you need it extended?
What's the number on this?
Here, so we can hear ourselves.
Joe states, hopefully not too long, but 91 days will allow us to get through the July meeting. I expect to be back before you much sooner. We are working with the ZBA on an area variance. So the request is 91 days.
That by resolution?
Yes. Do you have a meeting date you want to set it for?
What's 91 days out from now? So May, June, July. Joe, would the July, would the July hearing now, for right now, suffice? If we have to make any arrangements prior to that, then you can kind of
You want to
Reach
come
out.
back in July?
reach out to staff. So that would, Joe, if you would like to extend the hearing to May, then that would imply that you've only got a couple of weeks to get us the material. Is that going to be sufficient? So the applicant is requesting to reschedule the hearing to June,
So the June meeting,
correct?
is that the extension or that's the next meeting?
That would, the next meeting's May. So I think, yeah, I don't know that we have to
That's
boil
the
it down to a
extension
number of
he's
days.
asking
Yeah,
To the June meeting.
To the June meeting.
Yep.
So that's 62,
that would be June 17th.
The motion?
I make a motion that we consider this and give them the extension until June 17th at our meeting then.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Old business. First, in case anyone's here for 2024-0057, 269, 275 Fifth Avenue, that has been removed from the agenda at the request of the applicant. So if you're here for that, there'll be no further action on that tonight. First item under old business, 2025-0012, 219 Fourth Street. Is the applicant here or representative?
Good evening.
Maybe.
My name is Adam Batella. I'm the architect for the project. This is Hernan Lopez. He's the owner of Alias Coffee. Just to recap, we're looking to expand the use of the Alias Coffee Cafe from the approximately 1,000 square foot use at the front of the building to the remainder of the building, including changing the occupancy type to an assembly space. We were here last meeting. Didn't seem to be too much resistance. We got our area variance from the zoning board on April 2nd because the entire project exceeds 2,500 square feet. And one other item to recap, we're going to be adding 2 bathrooms as well as an additional egress door out the back of the space and making modifications to the existing path of egress to remove stairs and things like that to make it fully accessible. We're also flipping the direction of the door swing at the front. And there's kind of a falsely identified egress door off the side that's going to be modified so it no longer indicates that.
Any questions? More questions from the board?
No.
Okay, why don't you take a seat? We'll see if any member of the public has any questions or wants to comment on it. Is there any member of the public here to comment on this application? If not, the board will consider the application. So the applicant is seeking a special use permit, and we need to determine the length of that, whether it's indefinite or for a term. Anybody have thoughts on that?
For the owner now and not to exceed anything that would be when they change companies or change owners? Is that,
I understand you can do that that it would be in effect for as long as this owner owns the property, is it correct?
Well, there's three categories of time lengths. There's permanent, which would change status once a new owner occupies the space. There's
It would expire when when the ownership
No,
changes?
it would run with the land
would it run with land as a variance would?
if it was permanent.
Well, then
Okay, all right, so
For
that's
sure.
one option
temporary, and,
with which you would have to specify a term.
Yeah.
And the third?
I think the third would be, a no fly.
Oh, no, okay. So preference, the motion? Tom?
Was as long as he owns the building, is that an option? Is that an option? As long as he's the owner of the building, or? Then again, so that. Family member is- That's a good option.
So just
Yes,
to,
sir.
just to avoid, I don't know, any confusion. So Hernan is the owner of Alias Coffee, but not the building at the moment. He's currently in the process of purchasing the building, but he's not officially the
Understand?
owner yet. I think it's like an imminent few months kind of thing at most. So if there's talk about it riding with an owner, we just
Yeah.
want some clarification on owner of the building or proprietor or whatever it might be.
Okay, for clarification, though, this is special use permit, is it granted to the operator or to the owner?
It's granted to the applicant.
Who is
Microphone.
it, who's not the
So,
owner?
I guess. It's granted to the applicant, but it applies only to the specific property.
But if the
Okay.
ownership, if the applicant changes,
So if the applicant
leaves,
leaves, he can't take it with him and it doesn't necessarily transfer
so it expires,
to,
basically.
it would
If
expire.
there's a change of occupant.
Right.
basically.
Or lessee or whatever. So the three categories are permanent, temporary to cease on a specified date and not to be renewable, or renewable within a specified period of time set by the planning commission. In other words, you can give them a term of years or something like that.
Okay.
You know, and then it would have to be, then the applicant would have to come back.
But all three of those options apply to the applicant,
That's my best information at the present time.
I think so. Okay, so.
What do you want to do?
Clerk,
So if he buys the building,
if he's still operating it, whether he owns it or doesn't own it, I think the permit will apply. He ceases to operate what he's seeking the special permit for, then the permit would expire. And the next occupant would have to apply if he wanted for a special permit, special use permit.
So if he gets the building, when he gets the building,
Kim, can you make sure you speak in the mic?
Won't change.
when he gets the building, what if he wants to change the business?
It just gives up his special use.
So you'd have to start all over again if you wanted to change from a coffee shop to a whatever.
The special use you're allowing him under this permit is for an event space, which is not generally allowed in that district.
Okay.
So if he ceases to operate as an event space, I believe the special use permit, depending on how long he ceases, if it was granted permanently, would expire. In other words,
Probably in a year.
probably, it's usually in a year for something like that. I apologize, I'm not fully versed in this area, but
Makes sense, so.
I mean, you could
Yes.
consider a term because it's not done in that area normally, or you could make it permanent depending upon how you want to do it, or I think temporary is not an option for the applicant really at this point. Because temporary just can't be renewed.
So if we give him a permanent one, no matter who owns the business or occupies the business has the same rights as he had?
No.
No,
Just this applicant.
just this applicant.
And
Am
if-
I correct?
if-
It's-
Yes, I think that's correct, right? If someone succeeds them in that business, they would have to get a special use permit also, I believe.
Tell you the truth, I'm not completely clear on that answer, on that question. The applicant, it's granted to the applicant, but the applicant can't take it anyplace else. It applies to the specific property. Could he sell his business with the event space special use permit intact? I'm not sure. It's the first one I've dealt with. But it's within the realm of possibility, certainly. I could also, if I had time, I could review the question. If you want to withhold decision on that basis, if that is critical.
Does it make a difference in your motion? Answer that question.
Well, it depends on what else they would want to put there if somebody else owned it. I think I would like the permanent permit to go with this party, and when he ceases to occupy that building, then someone else would have to ask for a special use permit, if that's what they wanted to do with it.
So.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't have a good answer for you on that
So
one.
how can we?
without looking it up.
How do we proceed?
So can we give him, make it permanent with him and then revisit it later on? Is that a possibility? I mean, what happens if what happens if one of his children, I don't know if you have any children or not, but what if he gives it to one of his children?
If someone
Steady
inherits his
scenario.
business, in other words.
So it's right, do they have to go through all the motions all over again?
Well, if I'm gonna say
I don't know the answer. That's
anything
why
on
I'm
this,
asking.
is a special use permit is granted to the applicant
Right.
specifically. It results in an approval document. It goes directly to the applicant. It's not a variance by definition.
Right.
The
So
way it's written, it seems like
special use permit used to be under the purview of the ZBA, but is no longer.
Right.
So whether or not it has the qualities of a variance, I would leave to Corporation Council to determine. But otherwise, that the special use permit gets issued to the applicant.
So I mean, the issue seems to be the extent to which it might be transferable to someone else, and I don't have that answer.
Whether or not it goes with the land or not, because I would see this as, somebody like if you wanted to get another certificate of occupancy, then they would have to go to the building department in order to approve that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can kind of infer what you want, but I don't know. I can't give you an answer in terms of whether or not a special use permit carries with the land or not. I would assume that it would go directly with the applicant. And once the applicant ceases to occupy the space, then the special use permit is expired.
Well, at least even irrespective of that point, I think Tony's concern is that once they get the special use permit based on basically the size of the occupancy, right? But right now, it's being considered for a specific use that this applicant's going to use it for. If someone else comes in after him and is going to use it for something completely different, but still something that would require the special use permit, does the special use permit go with basically a change in the purpose of the occupancy?
So the use is an event space, right? And I don't know how many permutations of that thing there can be. I mean, I guess they're all different types of events. I think he was thinking of music is what I heard.
Yeah.
Maybe community meetings, things like that.
So what would,
I mean, I can do more research on this and come up with an answer. If the applicant was agreeable, you could table it for a month. I could give you solid answers. I'm sorry, I'm just not,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer
Well, it's
yet.
understandable. It's kind of esoteric, but I don't know what that does to your client's timetable.
Well, I mean, it puts us back by a month.
Yeah.
I
Are you
don't-
ready to move forward?
He's ready to do construction and pull the trigger on all that. And our expectation is that we would be able to kind of move forward with that after this meeting.
Understand.
You could also, I mean, maybe you could grant it for a term and then,
My question.
make it subject to renewal if the applicant would be satisfied with that. And then in the meantime, we could get the exact parameters of the special use permit in terms of its transferability.
Okay, is that,
Do you know? Well, yeah, I was just looking at it. Doesn't answer my question. It still doesn't.
so, does that sound like a solution? I mean, I think we'd like to
Yes, I think we'd
let
like
the
to-
applicant move forward. right?
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
I would say give them the term.
100%.
Would that be a sufficient compromise for you? Would be granted for a term, and during that term, we'll get this question answered, and then you could apply for permanent.
Or you could come back for a renewal when before the term was ended.
So it's either we wait a month and potentially get a permanent one, or we come back in a year or something like that.
That's essentially where we're at, what there has on the table, yes.
I mean, I suppose we take the immediate solution to be able to move forward. But it increases our risk, right? Like if suddenly there's some public comments and things like that, people don't like this project, they're going to have the opportunity to essentially cancel
Yeah.
something that has no opposition at this moment, right?
Right, so hopefully it won't raise the ire of the public when you operate for a year under the permit.
Okay, I guess we'd prefer to take whatever solution we can walk away from tonight with being able to get a building permit. So
Does the term have to be a year? Could be.
No, it
6
could be
months?
whatever you set it to
Could be
be.
a matter of months.
I guess it could be, yeah, it could be. Or it could be a couple of years or whatever you want.
All right, so what's your pleasure, folks? 6 months?
I say 2 years.
Well, we have one says 6 and one says 2 years, so can we have a motion?
What would you rather have?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we take a year. I don't know. It's
I think it's more for clarification, correct?
Yeah, but you'll also get one of the reasons for having a term as an option is to see how the use fits in with the neighborhood.
I mean, can we even, once we grant him, once we're squared away here, the public can't come back in
If
and go against them.
the public can always do whatever
Well,
it wants,
no,
right?
Right.
So-
right.
So
You know what I'm
if,
getting at.
when he comes back for renewal, if dozens of neighbors show up and say what a, unneighborly operation it is,
Mhm.
you might consider that in the renewal application.
That's fine. It's more just, it's another agenda item for you guys to have to deal with. We have to show up, it's like just a lot of hassle for something, that's all. But we're happy to accept that if that's what we need to do for tonight.
So someone propose a motion?
So what do we want to do? 6 months, a year?
Here,
Year? All right, can we give you a special use permit for 1 year and you come back to see if we can make this permanent? Once
Yeah.
we get the answers to our question?
yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay. It's
so,
better than waiting another month and maybe getting something worse, right?
not worse, it's just we'd have to wait a month to get our building permit.
No,
And it's work that's going to take a matter of weeks to complete. So
no, but. so-
every day we can't use the space is money lost on that kind of
I think
stuff.
the
So
board I
we
think
take the temporary one and come back in a year, that's fine.
All right, I think the board wants to see you move forward, so, all right.
all right, so I'll make a motion that we give him a special use permit for 1 year. And he would come back at that time to see if we could give him a permanent one. Once our questions
There's
are
an
answered.
option to renew for whatever term the board
Yes.
wants.
I second that motion.
Discussion? Had enough discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck.
Just one question, I guess. For the renewal, do we need to provide application material ahead of time for a meeting, or do we automatically show up?
Without having a direct answer, I would say,
Just touch
when
base.
you-
Figure it out.
when you're approaching the 1 year mark, I would just supply the planning department with an application for request for renewal.
Okay, Great. Thank you.
So I think it's clear that it's not a question that comes up every day here, so we'll try to resolve it,
Understandable.
okay?
Thank you.
So if I were you, I'd submit your renewal probably in March, or at least by March of 26.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, take care. Next item is 2023-0045, 185 Earl Street.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Greg O'Connor with Architecture Plus. On behalf of the applicant Unity House for 185 Earl Street. Just to give everybody a update on this project. This project was approved back in January of 2024. Unfortunately, just waiting for our grant to come through, the planning approval lapsed. So we are back again. There's been some minor updates to the plan, but Eric will pull that open. Maybe the current floor plan, or current site plan would be best to show. But while he's doing that, just to give you an update on what the project is, it's a current 2-unit residence that's abandoned that'll be converted to a teaching kitchen for skills training for Unity House. These are programs that they offer currently that will be housed now in this new building. It's renovating a existing 900-ish square foot structure and a 500 square foot addition on the west side of the building. The updates to this site plan are pretty minimal. The rear stair on the back, which is a concrete stair, and some slight revisions to the main entrance ramp. Previous board requested a accessible ramp to the building, so we provided that, as you can see. We did receive your staff comments and recommendations. There was a comment for a variance for off-site dumpsters. The current dumpsters for Unity House, which is across Earl Street on the bottom of this site plan, are their current dumpsters. They have 2 5-yard dumpsters. The programs that are offered right now in their building would be located here, so we're not really increasing the load on those existing dumpsters. So we are kind of looking for a relief from the variance request. I noticed there's a couple comments about maybe providing crosswalks as in addition to that. I would just curious on board's feedback on that. Or if you have any questions in general on the project.
Questions? I didn't quite understand what you said about, do you have arrangement with Unity House?
Yeah, so this property is owned by Unity House. Their current building that they own right now, their office is directly across this Earl Street, which is their main office. So on the second floor, they offer these skilled training programs in their building. These would now be located in this building. So we're not really increasing the kitchen waste load on those existing dumpsters. They would just be shared across the street.
Well, is this operation going to create trash?
It will. It's a fully
Is it
working kitchen.
replacing something else that's creating trash so that it's a wash?
It's basically a wash, correct?
What is the operation that's not going to be creating trash anymore?
So they would still have the kitchen in their main building. So, I mean, they would still have trash from their offices and that would still, utilize those dumpsters.
But isn't this kitchen operation going to be, that's basically the whole operation is kitchen, right?
Correct.
And the other operation, it's ancillary to whatever else is going on there, right?
Correct.
So would it not be true that this new kitchen is going to be producing a lot more garbage
Not
than the
necessarily.
old kitchen?
Not necessarily. I mean, we could go for the variance. We're just requesting it because it was approved last time with that one. Just asking the board if that would be
The variance for on-site trash,
a variance for the off-site trash.
variance because you can't have
Right.
on-site trash.
Correct. Earl Street is also an alley, so it's not receiving a lot of traffic. We're just questioning whether or not we really need to provide a crosswalk. Only the staff would be disposing of garbage. Anybody that's learning in this building is not taking garbage to the dumpsters. That's entirely by unit houses.
They gotta learn to do that too, don't they?
True, but
Eventually.
it's a service they're paying for, so.
But would they be the residents that, you have residents that live in Unity House across the alley, the big building?
No,
No, you don't, all those floors are,
not to my understanding, no.
They could
no.
send it with a condition.
so they would park or take a bus to Unity House and have to go into Earl Street to get to the new kitchen facility.
Correct.
Questions?
I don't know.
Yeah, what was the crosswalk? I'm trying to connect the dots here. Why were we asking for the crosswalk?
I'm going to clear some things up.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
285-66 states that all uses shall locate dumpsters, garbage cans, or other refuse storage receptacles on the subject property, not within the city right of way. Earl Street, as much as it appears to be an alley, it's formally a street. So while it acts as an alley, it might not get used as much of a street, it's still considered as such. So if the zoning board, who is the only agency that could relieve the request for this item, is agreeable to a variance, then the additional comments on the staff report would be relevant in terms of pedestrian safety.
Well, I think that even, I mean, I'm very familiar with the area and where you're putting the new kitchen. I still seem to think that people are probably going to be coming from the bus stop, maybe into Unity House, going through the back, going across the alley to your kitchen place. I think they need crosswalks. Yeah, paint something on.
What does a crosswalk entail? Just painting stripes on the pavement?
I don't know. It's a pedestrian wayfinding feature that lends itself to a degree of safety. Right?
Yeah,
In terms of its
but
implementation,
that's essentially what it is, though, in this case. I mean, I don't know about the curb structure there, whether it needs ramps or not. I mean,
There's no,
I don't know if
curbs,
the
there's no
alley may be
sidewalk.
level with the sidewalk. I'm not sure if there is a sidewalk even,
There's no, yeah, no sidewalks.
there's no
Yeah.
sidewalk.
If there's no sidewalk, if it's just alley to building,
Mhm.
then I would think it would just be, adequate marking to show both the pedestrians and any traffic that, there was a walkway there. Maybe signage,
Yes, signage. if it's a
signage
visual
warning
crossing.
pedestrian crossing or something like that. Because I think, as Tony mentioned, people will be not only transporting garbage across there if they get the variance, but having to go to the facility using that entranceway in the alley as a main access.
So would we suggest that they put the crosswalk at the beginning of the ramp or in front of the building? Because there is no sidewalks. Can we suggest that?
I mean,
We don't have a plan with a crosswalk.
Because the whole back of Unity House is a big parking lot, so even if they came out of the back of the building, the ramp is going to be several feet from the front of the house going down the side of the alley, so I would assume the crosswalk would be at the beginning of the ramp or signage or whatever.
Yeah, if it was requested and needed, then we would just follow whatever applicable standards there are. Troy.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure I can really comment on the placement of site features for you guys, and you guys gotta have to determine that.
So
We don't have drawings.
at the end of your ramp, is it close to the back entrance of Unity House? So like if you got off the ramp and walked across the alley, is that the back entrance that's?
Essentially, you would have to go around just a guardrail that's, separating the alleyway from the parking lot.
Okay.
No, they would have to go out to another meeting.
They went update the staff report to show what those changes would be.
They gotta go get a variance anyways.
Yeah.
So, I think only the zoning board can grant them relief from the requirement that they have a trash plan on site. So I think the applicant's gonna have to go to the zoning board anyway, so you could ask for updated site plan showing the specifications of the crosswalk and any signage that might be required.
Just safe pedestrian route and egress to the,
Mhm.
trash area if the zoning board approves it.
So conditional on getting the variance. Do we need to? We don't need the crosswalk if they don't get the variance, correct? Or is that needed for the pedestrian operation anyways? I mean, it came up in the context of the trash, moving the trash, but now Tony's identified other pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, I think that's up to you to
Does,
decide.
does the guardrail have to stay where it is if they can get a direct access from one building to the other? Is that just for parking?
I think there's
The
ways
guardrail?
to potentially create an opening, make easier access, but you would be transversing through parking, so it might not be ideal.
All right, well, why don't they get the variance first and then come back and we can look at it?
So this discussion really is all contingent upon whether or not you get the variance. You are going to apply for variance, right?
Yeah, so we would apply for it. We only questioned it because it was approved with that one last time, so just,
Okay.
we would apply for the variance and then
All right.
get that on the next
So-
agenda.
The former approval was not approved without a discussion about garbage, though. That
Sure,
did make that
absolutely.
last staff
Yeah, we did
report, and I
discuss.
believe you guys had an answer for it. But it's different now. You guys are looking at the dumpsters across the way.
That was always still the plan. It was always using the existing dumpsters. We
We
were
would
never
have to go
providing,
back and check, but
we're never providing additional
Yep.
on-site dumpsters.
He's still looking at it. too.
But that approval expired, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's then, this is now.
And just because they approved it, do we have to approve it? No.
No, that was then, this is now.
Yes.
So can we proceed with secret determination?
Are we
This is a type 2.
It's a
type two? So you can, yeah, you classify, you can motion classify it as a type
So
two.
we'll move it forward, then that will be controlling on the zoning board?
No, because it's basically you determine that no review is required. The zoning board, before it takes its action, should also determine that,
Okay.
or make a separate determination.
Got you. Anything else you want?
There was one project precedent we wanted to mention that did get approval without on-site dumpsters, and that was 504 Broadway. But
All right, so
yeah,
that has a garbage room. Do you have a garbage room?
I'll leave it there.
Okay, well, just leave it there, okay?
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. So board.
I think we table it until they get their variance, right?
Do you want them to come back with, well, if they get their variance, do you want them to come back with a pedestrian crosswalk?
Yes.
Okay, you can motion that, I think.
All right, I
So we'll
motion.
do that without a secret today then?
So if it's, you can classify it as a type two, if you want to do that by
Do that
motion,
first.
just to recognize what the classification is. And then do a motion to have them go to the zoning board to get their applicable variance, and that if they get the variance, to come back with a pedestrian crosswalk.
All right. Is anybody willing to make that motion? First of all, on classifying it as a type 2 action?
I classified it as seeker type 2, right?
Second,
I second that motion.
discussion on that motion.
No.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the motion carries.
Okay.
And then the next,
I make a motion that they get their variance through ZBA and then come back to us with an appropriate crosswalk plan.
second,
I second that.
discussion on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Next item, 2025-0019, 244, 246 First Street, Post and Kill Place. Is the applicant present?
Good evening. My name is Kelsey Carr. I'm the civil engineer for the project with Bella Associates. I'm joined this evening by Brian Barker with Architecture Plus, as well as Jesse Battis with Posting Place Limited Partnership. So this project received site plan approval and a seeker negative declaration previously back in November of 2018, and then got 2 approval extensions in 2019 and 2020. So it's been some time since those approvals, and so they have lapsed. And so now we're now seeking new approvals, but the scope of the project remains substantially unchanged. However, with the adoption of Recode Troy in April of 2023, the zoning district of the site has changed to business development. And in that zone, multifamily housing, unfortunately, is no longer permitted. So we are requesting a use variance through the zoning board. In terms of seeker, in our submission package, we provided a markup of the previous full environmental assessment form that received the negative declaration. And that markup reflects minor changes based on the current project. The environmental thresholds that were established by the original seeker review remain intact or have been reduced with impacts, with the exception of 2 changes, which the use now is no longer permitted. So that changes the answer to that question. And then the adjacent former Irish Mist building has since been listed on the state and national register of historic places. So that adjacent building listing now triggers that this project is a type 1 action instead of previously being unlisted. So I just want to provide a quick project overview since this project is new to this board. So this is the redevelopment of a roughly 2-acre parcel to construct a 4-story, 81-unit multifamily affordable housing building. Because the property is located within the 100-year floodplain, the ground floor of the building has been designed as parking, which has been designed with open grading that will allow for flood storage as required for the floodplain. And then there will be 3 residential floors above. There will be 2-way driveway access provided on both First and Second Streets, which is consistent with the configuration of the existing property. Internally, the parking structure will have a 1-way traffic movement. Where the property abuts the adjacent residential properties, we are providing privacy fence or a landscaping buffer as required by the code. Because the building is U-shaped, it provides a unique opportunity to provide a really nice internal courtyard that will have a playground, lawn space, and seating area for the residents. We've had multiple meetings over the course of the approvals and the extensions with the Troy Fire Department. And during the original approval, they requested that there be fire truck access into the courtyard. So as such, as part of the renewals, we revised the courtyard design to provide a traffic graded grass paved loop that is rated for the fire truck loading and provides adequate turning movement for Troy's ladder truck. As part of the new requirements of Recode Troy, we prepared a parking assessment and transportation demand management plan. And this shows that the 81 units will require roughly 81 parking spaces. In the site plan, you'll see that we are providing 69 internal garage spaces and 29 exterior spaces for a total of 98. You'll also notice that our plan shows 15 banked parking spaces for potential future construction if determined to be needed down the line. So we feel that these spaces are more than adequate given the affordable housing use. In the staff notes, it did note that there's the new requirement for the 25-foot parking zone front setback. So as submitted, the 29 exterior spaces are outside of that setback, so they meet the code. There are 2 of the banked spaces that do fall within that setback, but we can either adjust the location of those spaces or potentially remove them because we do not feel that those spaces will be needed. As part of our next mission to you guys, we are planning to revise the plan to include the required EV charging stations, which is also a new requirement of HCR, which will be one of our funding sources. And we will be increasing the bike parking to meet the new code requirements. Another important component of the project is that the site does have soil contamination from the historic industrial uses. So the project was accepted into the New York State DEC Brownfield Cleanup Program, and the applicant is currently in the process of completing the pre-design investigation with fall of this year targeted for final approval of that report by the DEC. Following the report's approval, the development team will draft a construction work plan that will guide the remediation work to ensure that a clean and healthy site is provided for the future residential use. And I just wanted to also quickly touch on variances for the project. So under the previous approval, we did have variances for parking as well as front and side setbacks. Those variances either no longer apply or have changed because of the new zoning requirements. And as I mentioned, we are now pursuing a use variance for the multifamily housing. So we have identified 2 area variances with the current code. The first is to increase the maximum front setback to 12 feet where 10 feet is required along the Ida Street frontage. And that additional 2 feet is needed to provide adequate separation from the building to the adjacent overhead electric lines. We're also requesting a variance for roof form where the code requires that the roof is interrupted by roof features or changes in roof form to reduce the perception of large scale buildings. So Brian will get into more of the architectural details, but specific to this variance, we feel that we are meeting the intent of the code through variation in materials, colors, and projections in the building wall that have been designed to minimize the attention of that 4th story of the building. But I will note that the adjacent Irish Mist building is 4 stories. So we feel that the architectural design will help to transition from the 4 stories down to the 3 and 2 story residential buildings adjacent. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Brian Barker with Architecture Plus.
Brian.
Want to just review the streetscape design for the project. As Kelsey mentioned, there's a kind of a taller brick masonry entry element on the corner of Ida and 2nd with a glass communicating stairwell that's kind of featured on the corner. And it provides a landmark presence and a welcoming presence to the neighborhood at the corner of 2nd and Ida, which is also the main entrance to the building and also where the bus stop is. In order to kind of make a connection from, as Kelsey mentioned, the kind of taller scale of the Lindy's Hardware building across the street, which is 4 stories and about the same height as the corner, to the more residentially scaled buildings north. The facade from that corner piece modulates down to 3-story brick elements with a belt course and then kind of a flat dormer element against the main volume of the building. So every brick element along the streetscape has a cornice. And reading through the guidelines, the new architectural guidelines, we think this building works well within the spirit of those guidelines. So the palette of the building is red brick. There's a lot of red brick in the neighborhood. unpainted red brick, some gray brick in between the red brick elements. There's masonry belt courses on the building to delineate stories and the kind of frame the bays on the masonry elements. There's masonry trims, masonry lintels along the ground floor. There's also different types of cementitious siding panels and products ranging from different neutral shades of gray to kind of close to white as you go towards the sky. And the intent was to kind of bring the heavier materials and colors to the street. And then as you go up between the brick elements, those colors would kind of dissipate towards the sky. So the building is more intentionally trying to come to the scale of the local neighborhood residentially, as well as address the building across the street at 4 more stories. So some of the architectural elements we're employing here are the masonry bays, which are those red brick bays along the building. Those protrude out about 1.5 to 2 feet. So they're forward. The main portion of the building is just back 2 feet. So all the red brick elements are kind of proud of the facade. So we think you'd read those cornice lines first and foremost. We're also incorporating several layers of masonry belt coursing to kind of bring some additional detail and grace to the building, both at the ground floor, wrapping the bay window framing, an additional belt course where the brick ends at the top as well. Then also metal cornices and canopies at the main entrance and at metal cornices at each brick element to address how those forms reach the upper part of the building. The color palette, as I mentioned, is kind of darker and heavier at the base and then lighter at the top to blend into the sky, so that it kind of helps disguise the height of the building and makes the elements that are forward more prominent. And as Kelsey mentioned, we are seeking a variance for 285-76L5, which has to do with breaking the roof line with architectural elements, which we're kind of doing here, but we wanted to make them break shorter because the adjacent neighborhoods, 2- and 3-story buildings. And so we didn't want to keep those cornices up at the 4-story level. We wanted them to come down from the corner element to kind of relate to the surrounding neighborhood. I think we covered most of it. It's going to be, as we mentioned before, it's built. The site is located in the floodplain, and the ground floor has to be constructed to be flood proof and allow flood waters to pass through the building without introducing additional loads on the building. And so the ground floor is reinforced concrete and steel. And then there's 3 stories of wood construction on top of that platform. In order to allow the water to pass through the building in the event of a flood, all the openings in the ground floor, which exceed the percentage of transparency in the architectural guidelines, I think we're at 60%. They do have kind of a aluminum picket fence in those openings to coordinate with the fencing around the site. But those would allow visibility through to the parking garage, and would also allow floodwaters to pass through the building. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board, any questions?
I'm looking at the plans and there's just so many. How many entrances do you have for the parking garage? Just one in, one out? One, where is it? Is it on First, Second, Ida, Jefferson?
Let me go back. So it's a 2-way entrance off of both Second and First Street into the site.
Okay.
But then there's a one-way entrance into the parking garage. You'd go through, around, and then out on the First Street side.
So you would have to go out First Street side.
No, you could go back through the parking lot to Second.
Okay. Oh, I see, going across, so you can come in both ways and, okay.
Yep.
Are you going to allow animals in your apartment building?
Hi, Jesse Bates with the applicant.
Hi.
Yes, we do allow 4 pets. We have a pet policy. Generally, it's limited to small dogs or cats.
Okay, so do you have any areas where you're gonna have disposable baggies for your tenants or a little dog park or?
We don't have a dog park in the plan, but we certainly can provide for baggies around the location and the site.
And a place to dispose of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What was was this the one with the fire department had some comments on this?
Yes.
And what were they again? Can you go through that quick? I'm sorry.
In our original discussions with the fire department, they wanted fire truck access into the courtyard because of the U shape to be able to
Mhm.
provide, I think, 35 feet from the building walls on
Yeah.
all sides.
Mhm.
So we have a stabilized grass paved loop that provides those distances and the fire truck can turn through that loop.
So has a fire, so that's the fire department is good with that right now?
The radius is from here. No.
No.
Okay,
The ori-
okay, all right, okay,
Originally they were, but it's new, there's been
okay,
turnover.
all right.
Yeah, if I can just clarify, it's been a long time since this project was originally proposed. We were ready to move it forward, but the state had given us an indication that we should wait before it'll be financed until there was some advancement of the salt pile being moved on the riverfront.
Salt pile.
The salt pile being moved on the riverfront. And so now with the advancement of that project with, an end date in sight, the state has given indication they're prepared to move forward with the project, which is the reason for the delay. That said, we haven't been resting on our laurels. We're aware of certain issues around increased EMS calls at affordable housing developments. We're, really excited to have a dialogue with the fire department to talk about ways that we can offset that, either be it financially through some sort of a fee for call, or if there are ways, and we're looking at if this is workable through code, if we can have calls go locally to our security, because we'll have security at a front desk where they can try to intercede before it goes to a call out to the fire department. So, we're looking forward to advancing those conversations in the context of this. We've also met with the Osgood Neighborhood Association just last week. We're on schedule for the Little Italy Association in June. We had previously received a letter of support from the Riverside Association, which now meets with the Little Italy Association. We're just getting back out there.
Okay. Does your person that would take the calls before you call the fire department, are they there 24/7 or is that just Monday through Friday? They're there weekends, whatever?
So there's financing provided in our budget with the state for we don't know if it will be 100% all hours coverage, but we have office hours in place with our own staff, and then off hours would be provided by the security. So there'll be somebody manning our office at all times.
What about this is under remediation now? Remediation is underway, is it correct? Pardon me?
No, the remediation is not yet started. We
Yes.
have a brownfield cleanup agreement with the DEC, and we've done all of our preliminary work through an investigation report. The next step is to do a waste characterization profile, and then finally our work plan. That's been on hold pending the approval from the state, but we've been in contact with DEC, and we're prepared to get started with that remediation as soon as we get a financial closing with HCR.
So you have a commitment from the DEC for remediation funds or?
Yeah, we have a brownfield cleanup agreement that allows us to have access to the tax credits for the project.
What's the timetable on that?
That work is expected to take somewhere between about 9 months of the total construction period.
And
That'll also
would
include,
when would that commence
we are hoping for a June closing of next year
to begin the remediation?
to begin the whole project, remediation, then moving right into
Is
construction.
remediation going forward with the construction?
Yes.
At the time of the construction?
Yep.
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
Jenny?
sure, of course.
Yeah. First of all, what does that mean, remediation and construction at the same time?
So the remediation involves essentially just soil cut deep. So we're taking out all of the incompatible material, bringing in clean fill, compacting it to grade, and then pouring for our foundation. So it's all kind of one process. The start of it is doing the shoring all around the site to allow for us to do that excavation, and then providing the infill material to bring it up to grade to construct the building.
So because the remediation hasn't even begun, you don't have a site management plan or a health and safety plan yet, right?
We have I will follow up with you on the health and safety plan. I'm not sure if that's been prepared yet, but the hope is there will be no site management plan because we're hoping to get this done as a track one cleanup where there'll be no contaminated material left
What'd
behind.
you call it, track one cleanup? So it's, and all the contaminated material would be removed?
That's what we're hoping for. If we can't do track one because of, if the contaminants are too deep and it threatens adjacent structures or things like that, which we don't anticipate, then we would go with track two, which would require a site management plan. Track two would provide for a cap put in place on top of this, on top of the
Right.
contamination and construction.
So when will you know whether or not it'll be track one or track two?
After we're in the process, number one, of updating our construction estimates to see if track one is viable, as well as doing, as Kelsey mentioned earlier, the waste characterization work, which we should know sometime in the fall.
Sometime when?
In the fall.
This
In the
fall.
fall.
And when would you get a certificate of completion? After the construction's completed or?
After the
during?
cleanup is completed, we get our
But
COC.
the cleanup is part of the construction project, you said. So-
But the cleanup portion that DEC oversees is complete when we have certified that all of the material is either cleaned or the engineering controls are in place to allow for the site management plan.
When do you think that would occur?
That would be at the end, probably sometime in 2027. Typically, DEC pushes towards year-end releases of the COCs, and we don't expect the cleanup to be done in 2026. It'll probably be early 2027. So we get a COC sometime after that.
So what is your view of the relationship between the cleanup project and seeker?
I'm not clear on the question.
Is there any connection?
Well, I mean, how can the board be assured that, I presume you're seeking a negative declaration. How can the board be assured that there will be no adverse environmental impacts when everything is contingent? You don't know whether this is a type 1 or a type 2 yet. And you're 2 years away from a certificate of completion of environmental remediation. I mean, we have to exercise, I mean, the board, according to recent case law in the third department, has to take its own hard look at the contaminated site and decide whether or not there will be any adverse impacts. And certainly, on its face, it is contaminated and will require remediation. So I'm not sure how you could get a negative declaration of this.
The site as it is contaminated could not move forward with the residential redevelopment without the site being clean. And because we have the agreement with the DEC, that is a commitment that is going to occur in accordance with all of their regulations and meeting their full criteria, which is very strict.
Do you have
But
some,
it's But that presumes that all of those things are going to be met, which is unknown too until they're met, right?
I mean, no matter what, there will be a cleanup plan that will conform, whether it's the type 1 or track 1 or track 2.
Right. Well, you'll have a plan and it will require you to do certain things, but that doesn't assure that they're going to be done, right? You won't get a certificate if they don't get done, but we don't
And then the
know.
project wouldn't be built.
Right, but we wouldn't know whether or not you were going to do that until you actually do it, right?
I mean, the city would, we would
assume you're
notify the
going to,
city
and
of
You want your
of that
project to
completion.
succeed, so you probably want to do that, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. There's things like financing that comes along and throws a monkey wrench into things, and who knows?
So I think I follow the thought here. There is no project without the cleanup is the short answer. And so this project is part and parcel, both the new construction and the cleanup. That is one transaction. So we are, number one, already enrolled in the BCA. We will not be permitted to do any construction activity until the cleanup is completed. And we already have an agreement in place with DEC to do the cleanup.
Well, you already told us that the construction and the cleanup are gonna go forward together.
Right.
But didn't you just say now there'll be no construction until the cleanup is done?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Well, it can't be both.
It's all considered a single phase, but the cleanup will occur first, followed by, we'll get the COC and then we will proceed with actual construction of the.
The
Okay, but
process with DEC is generally we do the cleanup, we grid the site. We show, grid A, B, C, D, all of the boxes in the grid. We clean them up to the point that DEC has taken approved endpoint samples to say, this cell is clear, move on. At the point in time that we complete, DEC will say you have completed all of your remedial action. They proceed to the process of issuing the COC. They don't actually issue that COC until the end of the year, but they clear us to begin construction activity. So what we do is we're clearing it portion by portion, cell by cell across the site until the point that we're done. And what it doesn't preclude us from is, if we clear the whole site so we can start our foundations while we're continuing to do site cleanup around the site. So in that way, it really is one project. It's just, there's a cleanup component and a new construction component.
It just seems to me like, are you basically saying that whatever approval you get from the DEC is going to be sufficient for the board's secret determinations? They can't, but the board may have a different view of that than the DEC, right? The board may see something that doesn't bother the DEC, but it bothers the board.
The DEC are professionals in brownfields, so I don't know who else could provide an expert opinion on what.
The board may have a different view of that, I'm just positing that. I'm not saying where that's going to go, but I don't think the DEC determination is necessarily binding on the planning board. The planning board members may have a different view of the seeker implications of this project. I don't know. We haven't discussed that yet.
I mean, you do have to disturb the soil in order to construct your project, right? So, I mean, there's potential for adverse impacts. I think what you're saying is that DEC is not lead agency here. So, I mean, I believe we are, right? Are we lead agency? We noticed it yet?
We haven't yet.
We haven't.
Determined
Seeker's
that
not
a
been
coordinated
reopened.
review would begin.
Say it again.
The seeker hasn't been reopened yet.
It has not. Okay. So we haven't even declared lead agency yet. Right.
That was contemplated for tonight. I don't know if we're going to get to that.
Right. Have you provided, I apologize, I haven't reviewed have you provided a new updated FEAF with the documentation from DEC regarding the brownfield cleanup?
I don't believe it has the specific documentation for the BCP, but we can provide that for sure. What we submitted was a markup of the original full environmental assessment form from the original approvals that showed any changes that have occurred. So we can supplement that with the environmental information.
Yeah, I think if you're asking the board to, essentially cede to DEC to acknowledge that DEC by supervising this project will minimize any environmental impacts, that you need to provide the board with documentation that sustains that conclusion. You know what I mean?
Before you can declare lead agency?
No.
Okay.
And before you can get any kind of, before you could possibly get a negative declaration.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. I think Public comment?
Doesn't the police department? or the
Yes.
Fire department?
We'll hear from the fire professional first.
Good evening. Jared Behringer, I'm Deputy Chief of the City of Troy Fire Department. I handle all of the building and codes and how it's going to affect the City of Troy Fire Department. I just want to confirm, Community Builders is the applicant, correct?
The applicant is a limited partnership, community builders.
Okay. So as far as site plan review, did we take into account the high voltage transmission line that's going to be running up along the south side of the building?
Yes. Yes.
Is that being moved or is that?
We are providing 15 feet.
Guys, we got to have a discussion with the board members. If the
So
applicant wants to respond.
my concerns are that with this, we have never accepted grass pavers in the City of Troy Fire Department. 12 years ago, we denied RPI on a similar application. We need under section D 105.3 for aerial fire apparatus access in the rear of that structure, or what will be on the north side in that U of that structure. We will need from 30 to 35 feet within that area from all sides of that building or all sides of that courtyard. So that will also account for snow removal. Those grass pavers at this time does not account for snow removal. So that would limit our access. That also eliminates our access on the south side of this building because that is the highest voltage transmission line in the City of Troy that will be 15 feet from this building. That is the largest transmission line that runs out to the county. I have significant concerns with the building being that close to that structure.
That would be for your equipment?
Correct.
accessing
We would
the
not be
building?
able to, we would not be able to use the south side of that building at all for any aerial operations if there was an issue. Because of that transmission line, we're not allowed to go anywhere near that. So the second part of this is that Community Builders has a history in the City of Troy. Community Builders currently runs 599 River and also runs 2 First Street. They also applied to take over the old Leonard Hospital site in 2000, I believe 21. It was shut down, or that whole project was shut down by a vote by City Council because of the concerns of Community Builders. We were talking about seeker and environmental impacts. I can state the environmental impacts that go with community resources, including police and fire, towards how it will affect us with this building is tremendous. Right now, they run 67 units out of 599 River, and they run 87 units out of 2 First Street. On average, they go from 200 to 225 calls, 200 to 225 calls a year for 599 River. It's 250 calls per year at 2 First Street. That's fire alarms as well as EMS calls. Police calls are right around the same. So on average per building for community resources based on police and fire, there's 500 calls a year to those locations, 500 a year. So there are significant impacts. So I'm asking this board to take that into account. A lot has changed since 2017 or 2018 when the original approvals were done. Okay, that impact that we now have a history of how those properties are managed, and quite honestly, they're confrontational, and we don't have a good rapport with those buildings. It's almost to a hostile effect. Currently,
With the management? or
with the
tenants
management
or
of those properties, Community Builders. So any account for what they're going to do, first of all, we would not be able to allow them on a safety basis to take the calls first and then give it to 911 if they need it. That wouldn't be allowed. And that's a liability on its own. And quite honestly, what we see at 2 First Street when they do have security there, it does nothing for us. We have significant issues. 2 weeks ago, a fire alarm went off at that location. The property supervisor or manager for this district that handles both buildings told a maintenance worker to reset the alarm prior to our arrival. Within 5 minutes, we had a report of a structure fire because of a kitchen fire within that facility. So that happens on a regular basis. There are 3 pages for the past couple of years of code violations that occur at 599 River, to the point where we started to threaten to fine based off of false alarms because they were not taking care of their property as it should be. So this is the history that we have with this developer. All right. So on top of that, at 2 First Street, management won't even allow DPU, our public utilities, to go in and get an accurate reading of water. They won't change out in what's needed. There's ongoing conversation since 2023 that they will not allow them in there to get a proper meter reading. So that's the history that we have with community builders. And I speak that because we see the effect on the people that are in this room of how it affects us at the fire department and at the police department. The fire department will be showing a large opposition through zoning to not change the zoning in that area just based off of this project. That's how much of a concern it was. It was so much for a concern for the previous city council that community builders offered to tear down Leonard Hospital at a cost of what the city then ate because of their concern of how they operate at those other locations. We see it on a daily basis, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating on my part that I have to send individuals there on a regular basis for a hostile work environment with the actual management company that runs those facilities. As far as my concerns about the actual site plan, if you looked at the old brick building down on River Street, as well as the Lion Factory, they all provided us access to that U with proper either concrete or fire department access roads. That's my big concern, because that high voltage line just takes out the south side of that building completely. So I'm asking you as a board, a lot has happened since 2018. So anything for consideration for any approvals should not even be considered that this is a brand new application brought in front of you. All right.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Are there others who would like to speak? Could you give us your name and address, please?
Ian Brew, 353 3rd Street. So I live right around the block from where this is supposed to go. I guess I had like 1 or 2 questions and then some thoughts.
Address the board, please.
Under what criteria would it be affordable housing? And would residents of the neighborhood have access to the park in the area of the center of that U?
No.
That's your questions?
Yeah, first.
All right, well, we'll give the applicant an opportunity to respond to some of these comments. So,
Okay.
Anything else?
It's a hideous, modern, architectural corporate slop building in a beautiful Victorian neighborhood. I don't know how they think that fits in with the architectural makeup of the environment. And I think we should be doing more to encourage home ownership rather than renting in that neighborhood for occupant-owned housing. A lot of that space is rented. There are lots of derelict buildings that could be revitalized and turned into housing. We don't need to put in a giant kind of ugly building, do we?
Okay, thank you. And is there anyone else to speak? Yes.
Greetings, everyone. Stephen Maples, live on 2nd Street. I'll just run through a quick few things. The TDMP shows 98 off-street spaces proposed, but only needing 81 by its own calculations. I think that it's a warranted idea to ask if we can bank more of those. I really don't think that they're necessary, especially since when we look at the bike parking is not meeting code at this point under the new code. They're suggesting that they're providing 20 long-term and 6 short-term. And by my understanding of the code, there should be 33 long-term and 20 short-term based on their current number of parking spaces. So adjusting the parking spaces could bring all of that, and expanding parking could bring all of that into alignment. The site plan also doesn't show sidewalks continuing across the driveways, which would be a pretty big deal. The proposed apex ramp at the southeast corner of the lot is not as accommodating as two perpendicular ramps for people using mobility aids, as it forces them into the intersection. The TDM, just another minor note, the TDMP doesn't provide the level of service information for bus routes, which is as required. Then getting to the entranceways themselves, 28569G1F2 says that if it's a two-way driveway, that it's not to exceed 20 feet, and it's shown as 22. That's again just making it more risky for pedestrians crossing a longer distance. And then in that same section, 69G1B says that all parking should be accessed from an alley where such exists. And if no alley exists, parking should be accessed from a side street if it's a corner lot. Well, it's a corner lot, the side street would be Ida. So this suggests that, possibly all of these things are kind of interrelated with a general reassessment of a site plan, the orientation of the facility, perhaps itself. And then finally, the facing on the first level, I would push back on the picket fence, and I would say it's much more like bars on the window. I would say that there's plenty of other ways to do that, to provide the grill work or the louvers that don't look so punitive or carceral. So it's not particularly welcoming to the neighborhood. So those would be my comments on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Is there anyone else to speak on this proposal? Okay, thank you. Well, the applicant, you want to respond to any of that?
Sure. I'll start with the response from the gentleman about emergency services. Certainly opened my eyes to some issues with property management here today, to a level that I think was news to me. I'm looking forward to advancing a conversation there around what we can do better, how we can advance that. Whether or not that's frankly, what are we dealing with the staff in place? I think the idea of them being adversarial with emergency services is unacceptable. So I want to advance a dialogue for that as we look at moving the project forward, and trust that that's a commitment for me that that'll happen. I work in the development department, not the property management side of the business. We'll advance a conversation from here. We'll come back with some answers. To the more direct questions, we are all rent regulated by HCR. Right now, we've proposed a mix of 50%, 60%, and 80% AMI units. For just a sense of what that means, it means those units are rent regulated and restricted by HCR, and so the rents will be set at a certain level. I can provide the exact numbers at a future meeting if it's helpful. That is always subject to change by HCR as they go through underwriting. But what we've informed by a market study to try to keep that at a rent level that's reasonable. We know that there are big plans for the riverfront. Our goal here is not to gentrify the neighborhood. It's to create, some access for middle and lower income people to afford to live here. We previously had committed to creating access for that open space for public groups, for the community to use. We do want that to be, owned space for our residents, but we're open to creating access for that for people, either for public events, for community events. We previously committed to the neighborhood associations to provide access to their community rooms. We're open to that discussion. As to how that works, I think that's a further conversation with the neighborhood associations. And I think for the design questions, there'll be some things we'll look at. They were, really good detailed questions, and we'll come back with more of an answer on the response.
All right, thank you. More discussion?
Getting back to the transmission line on Ida Street. So the fire apparatus, ladder truck would not be able to get in there, wouldn't be able to work there.
That's correct.
So that takes that whole side of the building.
The south side of that building.
South side of
completely
that
out of
building,
there.
it's, yeah,
That's one of the largest transmission lines in the county.
yes.
So
Could a pumper work back there or not?
an engine will be, because they're not using any aerial operations, but
Yeah.
correct.
And if you're trapped 4 stories up, you need to have
Right.
a
And
ladder.
that courtyard is on the other side of that 4 stories. So that's where the issue is.
Thank you. So what's the posture here? Now, can we declare lead agency?
Do we want to declare lead agency? Sounds like the DEC has a pretty good handle on, I mean, they've already got the ball rolling with the DEC.
Right, but,
Do we have to declare lead agency?
well, it is a type 1 action. So, no one else has declared lead agency, so it does require coordinated review. So
So we could be lead.
you could be lead.
They would- Is that in order now?
Sure, yes. I mean, obviously the applicant, they've already committed to updating the FEAF and things like that, so I wouldn't proceed further than that. And you can't actually without 30-day review, without a 30-day notice period anyways.
Right. So we won't classify it, but just take lead agency.
It is a type 1 action, so you can put that as part, that's why we have to declare lead agency.
We have to declare lead agency.
Well, no one else has, so I mean, unless, it's going to require coordinated review. You could table that, that's if you want to do that.
Pleasure, folks.
I think we should table that decision. There's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of other things contingent upon DEC and I think it's important to understand what our fire department was speaking about. So yeah, I think we should hold off on declaring lead agency.
Motion, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to present the motion to, I guess, hold off on declaring lead agency.
So table the application.
Table it, yeah, table the application for future review.
Fine, that's fine.
A second.
Motion made, second, a discussion?
Mhm.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion carries.
Thank you.
That's fine. It's probably better. I said it's probably better. Table it.
Next matter is 2025-0017, 285 Pauling Avenue. Is the applicant here or a representative?
What happened to National Grid?
Making your way through the crowd?
Did we skip to 0018?
Did we?
Well, that was on the new business first and then 0017.
Technically, you can go whatever order you want.
Okay.
What did we do? Skip one?
001 next in line.
Yeah, possible.
Oh, were you on that?
Seven, what did we want to do?
Well, the numbers are out of line.
Yeah, they're out of line.
So we're gonna do 17 now?
You can do 17, then we'll go back to 18.
Are you
Pauling Ave?
85 Pauling Ave?
285 Pauling Ave, yes.
Tell us about what you're doing here.
Excellent. So I'll introduce our team. My name's Kevin Johnson. I'm with Consigli Construction. And, our design partners here, SWBR, who are setting up, will share a few things about our job. But, we're here on behalf of Emma Willard School and Laura's here, with the school, really to discuss our project, which includes demolition of the Tangeman Hall, which is on campus, along with the addition of new faculty housing units in the northeast section of campus. So we did receive, Eric, and appreciate your feedback, but did receive the comments today. So we'll address those. We do have
have those addressed, but we'll address those via the presentation. And any we don't, we can follow up on afterwards. But before we start the presentation, I did again want to just thank the board for the continued cooperation and help through this process, but also share our timeline and our goals. We're hoping to, kind of work through this project and get in the ground this June, in order to support move in for Emerald Willard School next June, so they can staff and, fill these units. So with that, we'll move into the presentation with SWBR.
Good evening, Brian Dion with SWBR. So just try to zoom out a little bit and locate this for you. We're looking at the Emma Willard campus off of Pine Woods Ave, just to the south of that. We're proposing to do 4 new buildings with 3 units in each building, so a total of 12 units that would be housing for faculty. We've located them, like we're hundreds of feet off of Pine Woods Ave inside the campus. And there were a couple questions about setbacks and frontage. And I think we've addressed that the front of the buildings is facing the private drive, and they are set back off of that private drive 40 feet. The private drive is also 23 feet wide, which was another question about fire truck access. And the 23 feet meets that requirement, which I believe is 20-foot minimum for the width of that. Let's see. And so serving the 12 units, we have 25 parking spaces. So we have two parking spaces per unit. 2 of those spaces are ADA, which was another comment that came up. We are providing 1 unit that is ADA accessible, along with a route from the unit to and from the parking space. In between the buildings, we've located the mechanical systems. So we have heat pumps and generator and electric panels, or electric meters in between the units. And then at the opposite end of the building from those mechanicals is our storage units. Each dwelling unit has a roughly 10 by 10 storage unit associated with it. And then right outside those storage units, we have a dedicated space for 2 toters, 1 trash, 1 recyclable. So each unit has 2 toters. And they're in a dedicated space. We've provided screen walls to block the view of those. And
third-party trash removal, so like county waste or something, but just individual totes for each dwelling unit.
Right, so the toters would be pulled out to, again, another designated space along the road. And then the third-party trash company will come pick them up along with the other residential buildings in this area of the campus. We're also providing a playground to the east that would be used by all the residents in this area of the campus. And then just quickly touching on some plantings, we're going to provide some street trees along that private drive, along with some birch drifts in the back to kind of create some more privacy for the residents and separate it from the campus. And just take a quick look at what a typical building would be. We've got can't see it too well here, but we've got stone base along the bottom, and then fiber cement siding above, metal roof and shingle roof. Yeah, so for the 3 of the buildings, all the front of all the buildings is the same. 3 of the buildings have the same footprint, roughly 3,400 feet. And then the ADA building has a slightly different footprint just to keep the ADA unit on the ground floor. But that one, I believe, is roughly 3,500 square feet footprint. I'll just go back to that one real quick. And then just kind of touching on access into the campus, there's an existing gate off of Pinewoods Ave that we're going to be replacing. So we're going to remove a portion of the existing gate and one of the brick piers to make it wider, again, for ease of access for the fire department.
Yeah, so that was a comment. We worked through the planning workshop. There was some concern about access and egress, but this gate, which is long since been closed, will replace that, widen that to 20 feet. And our plans for operating that gate would be an SOS sensor or frequency reader. Basically, when a siren goes, an emergency siren goes, it picks up on that siren and it throws the gate automatically, such that they wouldn't need a card or a Knox box. And that's something we can, run the ground with the fire department and police department more, but that's what's currently in the plans now. And then, this is a through lane, which would take you out to Elm Grove, the Elm Grove entrance to campus. But, should they enter, or frankly, anybody, you can drive straight through, or there's turnaround, available within the existing lot, just across the road here. But Brian did touch on it quickly. There was concern about this road width. We had since remeasured. I think we had stated it was 16 feet. That was incorrect. It's 23 feet. So it should satisfy the concern of the road width. This private road width. Just with that knowledge, and that's updated on the site plans too. We did resurvey and verify that.
I think that's all I have architecturally. I'll turn it over to our civil engineer.
Hello, everyone. Ben Wolfing, SWBR, and the civil engineer on this. Just touch really quick on all this. The site here is sloped from the north to the south on the plan here. There'll be some cut into the slope where we put these units. The stormwater is handled with a swale along the back side that goes to some area drains. Those area drains go to dry wells located in the grassy areas in front of each of the units there. Those are properly sized based on the DEC regulations and the SWIP. We submitted it last Friday, so there probably hasn't been a chance to review it, but we'll continue to work with you guys to refine that and get that finalized and an ENOI submitted to the DEC. As for utilities, they'll be served with existing electric. There's electric poles along this private drive. They'll be pulled off of the poles on the plan south and provided either underground or overhead if they have to place another pole, they'll put one there. But otherwise, it'll be underground to the electric meters on each of the units. Water is existing from Pinewoods Ave, and it comes along the road and then goes up to Wellington Way, which is this building on the north of the plan there. It's currently a 4-inch line, so we'll be upsizing that to a 6-inch to provide adequate sizing for fire hydrants and such. There are 2 hydrants on that line. One is up by the Wellington Way building, and then there's one central to our site right on this area that will be replaced as well, but reused. They're existing hydrants. They're sufficient size. They're all 6-inch, but the line is 4. So everything will be up to code and adequate per DOH and fire regulations. There will be fiber optic line running from Wellington Way to these. There'll be a security that'll be linked back into that building provided on campus. The parking spaces are oriented perpendicular to the drive lane. As mentioned previously, there'll be an adequate number. There'll be 25 total with 2 ADA spots, and the ADA spots will have accessible routes to the accessible unit.
So the accessible unit is this building C, and those ADA spaces are right here. So there's a sidewalk, from those spaces, up to the front of the
And to touch on the TDMP quickly, each of these units has a storage space that can be used for long-term bicycle parking. There is short-term bicycle parking elsewhere on campus. As these are faculty, there will be a sidewalk that connects to the main center of campus, so they could use that in a pedestrian capacity. There are also 4 EV charging stations elsewhere on campus, so they have not been additionally provided here for these units.
Okay, thank you. Any further presentation before being grilled?
No, I mean, unless there was any more questions on, the comments, I know one we did not touch on was.
You did speak to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Snow storage wasn't addressed, but this is, all snow removal is managed by Emma Willard on campus, and even through this private road, so we expect they'll manage that accordingly. But again, that's fully managed by Emma Willard and is the plan, for this project as well. SWIP was noted. We did mention that, and that was on the comments, but that's since been submitted, to the board for review and inclusion here. And then to clarify, I believe, Brian, you mentioned it, but the setback, what we were referring to as far as the frontage setback, we're roughly measured perpendicularly about 375 feet from Pine Woods, and then the closest space of the building to the road is roughly 40 feet, but again, that's to the private road. Yes, exactly.
So I wasn't clear. Have your runoff and drainage concerns been addressed, or you just saw?
It's based on a spatial requirement of impacted surfaces that are required to provide that per the zoning code. In terms of, and I just want to make it clear, the setback, because I know that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
The setback was to the private road. The setback is in reference to the front parcel line.
The front parcel line.
The frontage and the front setback, the two area variances that they're on the bottom of the staff report. Those are the frontage is referencing the front parcel line, the front Pauling.
Oh, I see. So should we just update that on our application, or are we satisfied?
You would need to obtain a variance.
Okay. And then building frontage as well then?
Yes. Additionally, I didn't hear your presentation. I'm sorry. Did you mention if you would be putting in EV charging stations or anything like that?
So there's 4 on campus. We did not have a plan to put more for these units. These are individually staffed units, it's not so much a public dwelling. They'll be, given to the staff, by Emma Willard. I guess with that said, if it's required, we can consider a spot for that. I believe that's what. But we can designate, future spaces for EV chargers if that's.
I'm fairly certain that it's a requirement of all new off-street surface parking.
Okay.
If we find something that comes to light in the meantime, since we'll let you know, but it is just per the code.
Fair.
These, what are these? 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom?
So there's a mixture of 2, 3, and 4. So there's an equal number of 2, 3, and 4. So 4 2s, 4 3s, 4 4s. And then the ADA unit is a 4-bedroom unit. How we've handled the ADA, it's the ground floor. So typical would be 3, side-by-side units. In the ADA, it'll be a larger single-story unit with an additional on top. But that's how we satisfied the ADA requirement, such that they had full access on the ground level.
What about demolition? Do we have to deal with that here tonight, or what's the timetable here?
So the timetable, we would like to get in the ground in June of this year.
Occupy in another year.
Exactly. And the demolition it's related in the fact that it's within the same address. It's on the same campus, but the demolition is just off the page here. Tangent Hall is, you can see it right here. Whereas we do not have to demo to start this work, but all that work will be completed within the same time frame of construction. We will demolish the Tangent Hall while constructing the work down the hill for efficiency.
So do we address demolition in the context of this application? Or
Yes.
a separate application?
Demolition is included in this application. And it is part of the site plan. There's a specific demolition plan tag for Tangerine Hall.
I mean, the option does exist though to submit demolition separately as a separate permit and not include it in this. I don't know if there's any advantages to that. I'm new here, but.
So
It's just that big, yeah.
Yeah, so it is, okay. All right.
Yeah.
We're fine.
Understood.
We're good? We're good. Good. Some questions?
I'll make one other note, just one that I missed, and it relates to the fire department. So it was requested that we verify radio signal because this does drop off in grade, from the rest of the main campus. We did do that, share the results with Deputy Chief Jared. It is sufficient. We got a passing result and shared that on. So I know that was one of his comments in the planning workshop that we worked through and have addressed.
Are you gonna put any bicycle racks?
Yeah, so we did hit on that, but each individual unit has a lockable storage, adjacent to it that's dedicated to that dwelling unit. So that would be used for the bicycle storage. So they'd be stored within the units themselves.
As a requirement, you do have to address the short-term bicycle parking.
Short-term bicycle parking.
It is a requirement.
Okay.
So if that would be, if you're going to the ZBA and that's something that you're not banking on adding to your proposal, I would probably add that to your list of variance requests.
Okay.
Or just put some bicycle racks.
I just want to get some clarification on the variances that we need. So they're based off of Pauling, and the front setback was a 20-foot minimum. And we are.
The front setback, I'm sorry, was it 20-foot minimum?
That's what I saw.
Or maximum.
Let me double check that. Let's see. Okay, the front setback. Yeah. So the front setback is the minimum, maximum shall be the average of front setbacks is established by at least 50% of the properties within 500 feet of the subject property. So that requires a bit of mathematical calculation. In a nutshell, we're looking at the surrounding zones, the Emma Willard campus as being neighborhood 1, neighborhood 2. So the 50% of the property is within 500 feet of the subject property. I would venture that if you guys can prove that you don't need a setback, then show us the math.
Okay. And then the other variance that we need is because our front facade doesn't face Pauling. Okay.
It's about the front parcel line, which is the Pauling side.
Thank you.
All right, questions?
So it says planning board review demolition for approval. We haven't discussed any demolition. Is that correct?
There's a question if it could have been submitted separately, but
I guess.
submitted together.
Do you just want to tell them about the demolition, what the current state of those buildings is? And
So
I don't know if you brought any photographs or not.
Chris Harkin with Consigli. We're here to build these 4 buildings. While we're building them, we're going to knock down Tangeman for Emma Willard. So to get a demolition permit today does not help. It just costs them more money.
Yeah, the question came up because they had expressed some interest in wondering whether or not a demolition could take place prior to site plan approval. So the demolition is, there's language in chapter 141 of the city code that states that the director of code enforcement, provided certain criteria, might be able to review demolition proposal and issue a permit for that. This is on the same site. It's not related to the project. So the question was whether or not the applicant could obtain approval by this board to move forward with that demolition prior to obtaining site plan approval for the residential projects. if the applicant is willing to wait until they get their final approval for the project and coinciding with the demolition as part of that project, then that's
Yeah, that's fine.
acceptable to you.
It
then-
is.
Then there's no discussion. All right.
Any other questions, comments?
Are there any asbestos considerations with those buildings?
When were they built, actually?
I'm not certain when they were built, or do you know? Yeah, they're quite old. But yes, there is asbestos. We do have a report, and that will be handled appropriately. We'll abate the buildings, and then demolish. But we plan to submit that all as part of the demolition permit, but
Yeah.
absolutely there will be abatement.
Yeah, that's the
associated.
demolition review by Carlo.
So is there any action today?
You could declare the project as an unlisted project.
Motion, classify it as an unlisted.
I make a motion to classify this as an unlisted secret.
Discussion, second,
I second that motion.
and discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion carries. Any further action?
Not
Yeah.
today.
Okay,
We'll be back.
We'll be back.
you'll be back.
Right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Now we'll do 2025-0018. Me too. I'm sorry that I called you out of order. You had to sit through all of that.
Not a problem. Thank you. So Chairman,
I know you're going to be a lot faster.
as the chairman, members of the board, my name is Jessica Leese. I'm senior counsel at National Grid's New York Siting Group. With me tonight, I have Melissa Morrow, who's with National Grid's Future of Heat Group. We have Nick Schwartz, who's with our engineering firm CHA, and then Evan Galatelli's with our architecture firm SRA. So we're here this evening for concept plan review for our proposed energy center building, which is to be located at 249 River Street, which was formerly One Monument Square. The subject property is owned by the city, and the plan is for a portion to be, which was previously designated as parcel 2A. The tax lots have now since changed, but that's to be leased to Troy Local Development Corporation and then subleased to National Grid. The proposed energy center building will serve as an accessory building to our proposed Troy Utility Thermal Energy Network, or UTEN project. To give you more of an overview on the UTEN project, this is an initiative under New York State's Utility Thermal Energy Network and Jobs Act, whereby new thermal energy technology would transfer energy from a thermal source into a distribution loop. So the individual buildings are connected via highly efficient water-sourced heat pumps. And the proposed thermal source for the Troy UTEN project is a geothermal bore field within the city. And the bore field is going to be installed and operated and maintained by the Troy LDC. National Grid will install, own, operate, and maintain distribution piping in the city streets, the distribution loop pumps, and other equipment. And then the proposed energy center building would house equipment which would facilitate the continuous circulation of water from the geothermal bore field to the heat pumps. So we're proposing to build a 3-story building. It's going to be on approximately 3,048 square feet of leased land. And this is in the city's downtown mixed use and downtown 2 development intensity zone. It's also in the resilient waterfront and flood risk overlay zone and a local historic district. So this proposed use is a very low intensity use. It houses equipment for the facilitation of the geothermal energy. It's generally operated automatically. It runs 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, but it's monitored remotely by National Grid personnel. When the building does need actual maintenance, that would take place 1 day a week for approximately 4 hours once it's up and running. That's the typical expected maintenance, 1 day a week for 4 hours. And there would be 2 personnel on site then to do the maintenance. This is part of we could go into a little more details later, but this is part of a filing with the Public Service Commission. So there's various stages. So at this point, we're here to get input on the plan to come back with more solid plans, which we need to present for our next Public Service Commission filing. So I'm going to turn over to Nick to talk about the site plan a little bit.
Great. Thank you very much, Jessica. And so what you'll see here is we've got an existing or a proposed 1,400 to 1,500 square foot building that's tucked up right close to 251.
Nick, would you identify yourself for the record, please?
My gosh, I'm so sorry. My name's Nick Schwartz. I'm a principal landscape architect with CHA. We good?
Thank you.
All right, sorry about that. So there are a number of existing utilities. There's a 16-inch water main that runs through the site. There's a major stormwater line that runs through the site. There's also part of the combined sewer that goes down and tees into the county sewer main trunk line down along the riverfront. So what we're doing is we're actually relocating a number of those facilities. We've been working with the folks at Water and Sewer to make sure that everybody's on the same page with, where the utility relocations are going to be. Part of this, we are removing an existing very deep clay tile sewer. We're going to abandon that in place and fill it and provide a new state-of-the-art sanitary sewer using, modern materials to alleviate the infiltration issue, exfiltration issue that they're seeing with this portion of the site right now. We are looking at a modest type of arrangement with, concrete around the building. We do recognize that through the zoning, there's an 85% cap on building for green space. So we're gonna look to see how we can best accommodate that in the context of the lease line and also the site conditions themselves. So I know that Jessica had hit on the idea of a very minimal amount of people that are going to be at the site. So we haven't proposed any on-site parking. For that duration, we would anticipate just using one on-site on-road parking, on-street parking space for the use. I know that in some of the comments, there was garbage, everything's going to be done internally, toted out, and it's just, basic office waste at that point in time. I am going to turn it over so Evan can talk to you more about the building and kind of how it fits in and how we meet the regulations.
Good evening. I'm Evan Galatelli. I'm with SRA. To provide an update to you all, we met last Tuesday with HRC, the Historic Review Committee. The rendering you see before you here is what we had presented to them. Overall, the design of the building was well received by them. They did have minor comments, but we do plan on addressing those comments, and it doesn't stem too far from what you see before you here. Effectively, it is a one-story building with a three-story visual. Purpose of that is to respond to the scale of the surrounding context in the historic district of Troy. As you walk through the first floor level, it's a two-story ceiling height with a stair access to the roof. And what you see on the top level is essentially a parapet concealing the rooftop equipment. We do plan on working with HRC to pick up their comments. But like I said, they're very minor and they don't stem too far from what you see before you. Thank you.
So may I ask you, all your glass on the first floor, what are you looking into? What are they going to see? Or is that black glass that you can't see through?
So obviously this is a utility building. From a design perspective, you know, utilities aren't necessarily most aesthetically appealing to the pedestrian walking by. So we are proposing tinted glass with some transparency. At the roof level, it'll be a similar glass panel, but because it is essentially a 12-foot tall parapet concealing rooftop equipment, you won't be seeing through that top level. There will be a wall behind it.
Is that parapet closed on the backside also?
Yes, all three sides, and effectively the fourth side as it butts up to the existing building.
And is that, it appears, is that a doorway on the right side of the building?
Yep, so that will be the main entry into the building. There is a second entry and exit out the back. We utilized the glazing at the first floor level just to kind of mimic and respond to the adjacent buildings next door. And then we switched to individual arched windows to pay homage to the historic district of Troy.
And is this basically on a slab, or is there going to be a basement level?
It'll essentially be a slab on grade construction, but working with the geotech report, we're working on the structural foundations.
And
no basement.
The field is across the street from this building?
Correct.
And so the piping is going to be under the highway there, I take it, under the street, I take it, or?
Yes, actually, it will be. So you can kind of see the piping will come in from the backside, up into the backside of the building, exit out the front, and then come into the street on River Street, and then go both ways to make the loop. That loop will go up and around about a block and a half, come back, and then come back down Front Street to Riverside Park, which that's where the bore field is going to be.
The bore field's in Riverfront Park?
It is.
Oh.
It is.
But I see. All right. Well, there was a test bore across the street there. That's not going to be the field.
No, right now the field is anticipated and expected to be in Riverfront Park.
And you'll lease that from the city?
Yes.
The LDC will lease it from the city.
Okay.
So does everything on these streets to make your circles that all have to be disturbed as far as going underground, or is?
So yes, at some point in time, the loop that will be constructed by National Grid will have street closures and all of those other things as part of the installation process. You know, the intent is to utilize construction techniques that are less invasive and be able to have less road openings than you actually need.
Nick, I'm sorry, could you please bring the microphone up closer?
Yes, sorry about that. Can everybody hear me okay now?
Yeah.
So this is going to be beautiful brick and masonry facade?
Yeah, I mean, so that is the anticipation of what the building will look like when it's completed.
But what will be constructed of?
I think that's a question for Evan. Because I played an architect on TV and that just gets me into a lot of bit of trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we're proposing here is a brick veneer with a metal stud back up on the other side. So the goal and the design intent is to mimic the materials of the surrounding city buildings. Some of the styles you see are stemmed from buildings down the road and buildings up the road. So we kind of incorporate multiple elements and architectural techniques to respond to that.
Yeah, I was just more interested in the material. So Is there a functional reason for veneer rather than real brick or?
Well, to meet,
Cost.
it's a new building, so we do want to make sure that we meet energy code. So building a metal stud backup wall is one method to do, to construct that and to insulate this building. It is a steel framed building with a metal stud backup with a brick veneer.
Questions?
So looking in, going to the first floor, all your engines or whatever the hell you're gonna have in there, that's gonna be 2 stories high. All this machinery inside will be 2 stories high. And then you have other machinery that goes on the roof that's all going to be enclosed. Okay. So just,
Yes, correct.
okay, so just about all your buildings along that street are a little bit taller. We can't, that doesn't kind of look very aesthetically pleasing that it's so much shorter than some of the other buildings on the street.
We did, during our meeting with HRC, it was noted that this is a corner lot. There are variations that are allowed and thresholds that you can cross with variations of height. So we kind of tried to approach this with a happy medium of understanding that this is a utility building. The square footage in the single story space is adequate for that function. And then we, with the rooftop equipment, we decided to extend that further up with a false 3rd level, concealing that.
Is this currently a corner lot?
Yes.
This is an open lot. The building next to you, in the rendering there, you see,
Yeah, but is it a street next to it?
no, only in front.
But did you say it's a corner lot?
A corner lot in the sense of, sorry, I can clarify that. A corner lot in the sense of its end will be exposed to the farmer's market and the adjacent pedestrian access towards the river.
That's the area where the
Old City Hall was.
street used to go down. There used to be the walking street down to the river, right?
Yeah, and the walking street, I believe, is still there. We're not impeding on that area.
That access is closed now, right?
I believe so, yeah.
You're not going to open it as part of your project here, right?
No, it's not anticipated to be opened as part of this project.
So are you leasing more than the footprint of this building from the city? How far to the south will you be controlling? Just to the building line or more south?
We're actually in the process of finalizing.
It's for the meeting minutes that we
Yep,
get to
no
speak on the
problem.
microphone. Thank you.
So right now, we're in the process of finalizing lease lines with the LDC and the project. So, it will be, I think we've got about 3,000, little over 3,000 square feet plus minus for that. So basically double the area, the building footprint.
So the building is 1,500?
Right around there.
Well, what I'm wondering about is what is going to happen south of this building someday? Do you have any idea? And is it going to be consistent with what you're doing there?
Well, I think the answer to that is we've looked at this from the standpoint of, does this fit in with the downtown now? And how would it fit in if something was to happen later on? We want to make sure that we're preserving that view shed to the Hudson River on the south side of the building. But there's probably lots of possibilities for, what may happen in the future with the remainder of One Monument Square. I don't think this would preclude anything from happening, and I don't think it would be in contrast to anything that may happen.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what went into choosing this particular location for this project?
So this location was chosen based on the proximity to where the bore field is going to be. So the bore field, basically, if you look at the backside of this rendering and you're down on Front Street, you know, where the existing,
Bring it up on Google Earth, actually.
okay, thanks. Where the existing area is that has the smaller playground that's there right now. Not kind of in the redeveloped area up top, but kind of on the lower end. We wanted this facility to be as proximate as we could get it to the bore field, because it makes the pumps, you know, more efficient and use less energy that way. It also gives us the opportunity as about a halfway point when you start to take a look at where this loop is going to be. So therefore, you know, it's kind of in a halfway circulation pattern for it, and it makes it very easy and efficient to pump throughout the district itself.
So you're attaching to that red brick that we see now?
Yes, you can, you know, currently there are, you kind of look at where the trash containers are, where the fence is right now.
Right.
That's generally where it's going to be. That's where it would be.
So that's kind of like a huge step up from the parking lot, the way that looks now. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, there's probably 18 to 19 feet of grade change between Front Street and River Street.
So you're putting a 1,500 square foot building.
Yep.
And you're looking to get that doubled for the going south,
For the leasable area.
for the leasable.
Right.
area.
So, you know, we want the ability to have some space around it to provide regular maintenance activities for the building itself. Utilities that are going to need to be connected to the existing network that we're moving to the south of the facility. So that's why we need some additional space to be able to maintain those.
So that height right where it goes up, that height is going to remain.
It will remain, yes.
And so on this will be the west side of the building, what is that gonna look like? The side, same as the side?
That's probably going to look very similar to the side that you see there.
And how much land behind the building will you control?
Again, that remains to be seen, but there is a wall that goes down to the accessible route for Sam Judge's properties there. So it likely will not go beyond the top of that wall itself.
Any questions?
Yeah, there is one area of question that I do have, because it, you know, when you look at the view corridors of 30 feet, they kind of run counter to the maximum offset in this district of 10 feet between buildings. You know, our anticipation is to provide 10 feet offset, you know, at a minimum here, but probably a maximum of 15 based on the area. But you know, I'm trying to make sure that, you know, future projects understand, you know, if there's a 30-foot view corridor, it kind of runs counter to the zoning code. And just wondering how we kind of deal with that. Is that an administrative waiver by the planning board? Or is that a variance that needs to be obtained?
Well, administrative, I'm glad you mentioned administrative waiver. The board will have to determine whether or not to provide a waiver to this applicant for utility, for a utility placement within the waterfront district, the resilient waterfront and flood risk overlay district. That is something that this board can determine a waiver for. But the view shed corridor, and I understand your frustration. I don't know that it was thoroughly, I don't know that it was thoroughly, you know, discussed. I don't know how those discussions went with the new zoning code, but that is one item that will require variance.
Or which?
For the 30-foot view shed gap in between buildings in the waterfront district.
All right.
Yeah.
So under the zoning ordinance, there would have to be a 30-foot alley between Sam.
There would have to be, it basically it states, not basically, it does state, buildings, hang on a second. Opening of 30-foot, provide an opening of 30 feet between buildings for an unobstructed view corridor to the river.
So every building that's built along there, that would apply to.
Along the waterfront. Yeah.
Space. You run out of space pretty soon.
Pretty quickly, especially downtown lots.
But can you provide a waiver on the 10 feet? Can the board provide a waiver on the 10 feet?
The board doesn't have the jurisdiction over.
Okay,
that-
I'm
that
just
particular-
asking the
No,
question.
that's what I was like distinguishing. The board does have jurisdiction on the use of a utility building within the waterfront overlay district, but it doesn't have the purview to issue a waiver on a zoning code requirement.
What is the 10-foot requirement?
I imagine you're referring to the maximum amount of setbacks in between buildings.
In between buildings is 10 feet.
But that's in general for the district. In terms of the waterfront overlay district, though, they require, the code requires a 30-foot view shed in between
10
buildings.
doesn't apply here, 30 applies here,
Correct.
unless you get the variance, which you presume.
All right, so does the 30 feet supersede the 10 in terms of a zoning code? Now, I'm trying to.
Yes.
To figure out, okay, so.
I think when we're talking about the building setbacks, are kind of regular and standard for the district, the use district and the development intensity. But we have this additional requirement for the waterfront flood risk overlay district.
Okay.
So
That's in addition to the the development intensity guidelines.
Okay.
So if you get a variance on the 30 feet, you're outside the 10 feet already, right? So is that?
Or if
does
we
he have
just
to get
provide
both?
this. Or if we-
Sorry.
What does our attorney say?
They're conflicting because the setback from the property line is a minimum of 0, a maximum of 10 feet. But then this section, I think it might have been a separate section labeled under Hudson River water view, or provided that you had to have the opening of 30 feet between buildings. So if the adjacent building is on their property line, we would have to be 30 feet setback off of our property line, but the maximum allowed in this district is 10 feet. So I guess also we would ask for clarification of what the board would like to see as a compromise between, seems like we have to get a variance either way.
So I didn't draft that part. We've sent prior applicants to the zoning board of appeals to get relief from the 30-foot view shed. And did Neil Palone's project also get relief from the 10-foot? Because I think he did, because it was next door to that other structure.
I'd have to defer to Angie, but that was a First Ave property
Right.
in a different zone.
Well, it's minimum of 10 and minimum of 0 and maximum of 10, right? Is that?
Right, but there's an overlay, right?
But the overlay,
The
so
30 feet would have to be between buildings. If the other building is on the property line, then that pushes us 30 feet off, of it,
Mhm.
right?
So I guess the question becomes, what supersedes, does the overlay district supersede the existing zone?
well, under the first part, you can be right up next to the judge building. So
Yep.
you're don't need anything there. What you need to do is to satisfy the 30-foot
Yep.
by getting a variance, I would say. But subject to our.
That's what we've done in the past.
Okay.
And then you're saying, if I understand correctly, actually the side setback.
The view corridor, so what I'm suggesting is the view corridor for this project not be between this building and 251 River Street. My suggestion is the view corridor be between the south side of the U10 Energy Building and whatever future project lines itself up to the south of it.
Right, unless that person gets a variance also.
Correct.
But I think the code contemplates 30 feet on either side of any building that are built there. That's why you need a variance.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure that I was very clear on the next steps for this.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at this, I'm just kind of pulling up the development intensities here and stuff. I'm looking at the need for relief of a 30-foot view shed corridor in between 251 and 249.
Okay.
And I'm looking additionally at a second variance to exceed a 10-foot maximum side setback to the south.
Okay.
But yeah, I think ZBA could probably kind of hash out some of like the zoning conflicts there and stuff like that, clarify that for you. And if you have not gotten the clarification you need, then let staff know.
Yep, absolutely. Very much appreciated.
Okay, anything else? Okay, I guess then nothing to be done except come back. Then you have more.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Good luck there. Yeah, so
No, I'm teasing,
is
yeah.
this the last one then? 2024-0059? Is the applicant present? Hi.
84th Street?
Yeah, 84th Street, yes.
Yes, that's me. I'm Brendan Tadio, representative on behalf of Me Studio. They couldn't make it. There was a thing with the scheduling, the website. Got up to speed on the project. I wouldn't say I'm 100%, so I'm partially here to take questions and answer what I can on the project. I guess I'll give an overview of it. It's residential with commercial space at the ground floor. There's a carriage house in the back that is vacant. There's 3 residential units currently, 1 commercial unit. It's going to be 8 residential units in the front and then 4 occupying the carriage house in the back. There is a courtyard currently in the center. There are additions on both the carriage house and the main structure going into the courtyard. The main facade, there's no work on that. There's a little bit of a roof adjustment to the main building. I believe it's to get extra ceiling height and that has gone through historic review already. The rear, the carriage house, there's new facade work going there. That has also gone through historic, and it's like a glass garage door within the existing opening that is infilled with CMU right now. A couple of windows above, and then this exit to bring you down to grade that is into the alleyway. And I think that's the gist of the project.
Questions? You've had a chance to review the staff report. I didn't hear what you said at the beginning. This is not your project?
No, I'm sort of filling in for friends here that I've worked with in the past. I am an architect, and they brought me up to speed on, the goals of the project and some of the main points. I did review the comments that came in
Do you
today.
want to address any of those points?
Let me see. Alleyway, there was I think a difference of understanding on the dimension between the stair that comes out, the landing and stair that comes out into the alley, and the thing across from it, the concrete curb. 12-foot Graciela noted 12 feet 9 here, but I think it's actually 12.3 on the site plan. The concern, I believe you understood it to be a 9-foot leftover. So we feel that there's still enough space. This landing is only coming out 3 feet and an inch, and it's very similar to other, trash that is all along that alleyway and other concrete curbs that come up. The main floor of the carriage house is, I think, somewhere around 18 inches above grade. So there is some structure needed to bring you down to grade. And I know there was initially, or I believe there was initially a sort of recessed entry going through historic. They had pushed for either a glass garage door or like a historic wood, I think a wood historic, I don't know how specific that was, but yeah, a garage door look, and the recessed entry was going to change that. And they pushed for this. That is, what else? Snow. There were some revised drawings that Graciela sent over today, showing where the snow pickup or not snow pickup, the snow location in the courtyard. The garbage bins, that is currently where all the garbage bins are located along that alleyway at the back of the building. So I'm not sure what the suggestion is for where to relocate those, if there is a suggestion from the board. Bicycle storage, there's bicycle storage in the court.
The
Sorry.
plan can't be approved with basically alley storage even though it's happening there, that's not official and shouldn't be approved.
So garbage storage in a public right of way is probably happening all over the city.
Right.
But officially, if you want to get a project approved, you have to show that you're not going to be doing that because it's against code.
So if, let's say the garbage were stored in the courtyard and wheeled out there on trash day,
that
could be approvable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many feet between your staircase and the other side of the alley?
It's either 12 feet 3 or 12 feet 9. I think it's 12 feet 3.
So a couple of things about that. I spoke with Deputy Fire Chief Jared Behringer. And I spoke actually with the architect that's assigned to the project. He confirmed some of the measurements here, because what we're looking at is number one, an encroachment, right? Because that's not part of the parcel. So that in and of itself would require a variance, but additionally, there's no clearance. So that's going to pose an obstruction for any emergency vehicles, particularly garbage, dump trucks, and fire trucks. I've spoken to the applicant. I've suggested that he, at least if he's going to persist with this design, that they engage in discussions with the TFD, because this would bottleneck the alley there. And while there are dumpsters in the alley currently, they are on wheels. They are relocatable. And as I understand it, the fire trucks already have to drive up onto the garage portion of the parcel across the alley or across William Street there, which they don't favor doing. But that's also city property. So I'm not really sure if any applicant could stop them from doing that. Right? But in terms of that egress stair jutting out encroaching into the alleyway, that's going to pose a problem for the design.
So that would be a variance for encroachment, and then that enables further discussion with the fire department.
Yeah, I'd probably discuss the logistics, because I'd discuss the logistics of having the staircase with the fire department prior to going for a variance.
Okay.
The applicant's going to want to ensure that the fire department is aware or the applicant is going to want to be aware of any concerns the fire department might have. And as well, the measurements that Kyle had told me were located on the site plan might deviate somewhat a little bit from the actual distance.
Is that something where it could be a photo measuring tape to?
There needs, I mean, there needs to be a concise, precise measurement, you know, in terms of the width that's between the proposed staircase and the edge of the, that little mini sidewalk across the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
In addition, I'm not convinced that the ZBA has sole or any jurisdiction, I'm not sure, to grant an encroachment in the city right away. I know engineering has discretion in that matter. And of course, the city council would too, but the zoning board of appeals, I do not think has the right to encumber a city right away.
Well, they don't have any clearance on this encroachment, which in and of itself would require variance. So
that might, yes,
that
if they
particular
were-
part,
right,
yeah,
the clearance
Right,
part, I understand,
right.
but what I'm saying is that to even get a right to install your staircase in the city right away is a different legal matter. I'm not saying we don't have a
Different
few out
from-
there that haven't been installed perhaps illegally.
Yeah,
too,
I mean,
but,
that was one thing of note
but-
down the alleyway. There are a couple of instances of exterior.
There may
stairs.
well be, but as part of a site plan or as part of any, you know, planned construction or rehab of this building, you're going to be well advised to get permission either directly from engineering. We do have encroachment permits. I don't know whether one would issue for this though or not. I mean, especially if it's going to impinge on city vehicle access through there. I don't know if our garbage trucks use the alley all the time. I don't even
Yeah,
know if they can
we'd
fit.
have to look at it and workshop with you guys. I think.
So that could
to
be
talk
actually
about
the
these
first
issues
step,
further.
the encroachment permit. And then if that doesn't fly, then the variance.
Yeah, I would suggest the applicant to sit down with the city engineer and the fire department to discuss the concerns and viability of the proposal.
Okay.
You might want to consider an interior staircase and interior trash storage.
And I made that recommendation to Kyle too.
Yeah, I think that requires going back to historic and
An interior space.
oh, I guess, well, how do you get up? You would have to get up from the alley,
Right. So you said that there's an 18
and they
inch,
didn't want a recess, I believe.
you said there's an 18 inch
Yeah.
floor height.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably, you know, I would suggest that Kyle kind of brainstorm on it. I don't want
Yeah.
to make any, you know.
We can't decide it tonight.
Right.
Understood.
reasons.
Right, anything else?
I think so.
I would, you know, this is an unlisted action under seeker. I would declare it to be an unlisted action. They've supplied, I think, the maximum amount of environmentally related documents that we, for a minor project, could ask for. So whether or not you feel like you have sufficient information to issue a determination is up to you.
You could just classify it today and.
All right, so the motion to classify this as an unlisted action?
I make a motion to classify this as an unlisted action.
Second,
Second that.
discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Take care. Is there any other business to come before the zoning planning board? Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Discussion, objection? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
So they